Rising. Grand Rising. Hope everyone's doing well this rising. Thank you for bearing with us through our minor technical difficulties. Hope everyone's having a great Thursday rising. How you doing today this rising? It's LJ Free.
Grand Rising, everyone. I'm doing well. Bright eyed, bushy tailed, ready to go.
That's what's up. Hopefully everyone is in the chat is doing well. Grand rising to all of the individuals who are listening and just choosing to take this information and help their community and potentially their tribe. Grand rising to the new subscribers. And let's go ahead and see who we got in the chat. All right, Grand Rising Kappa Tribe or no tribe? Grand Rising Oak Cliff. Grand Rising Michael Robinson. Grand Rising Marlon P. Grand Rising Doodle Vision. Grand Rising You Don't Want It. And Grand Rising anyone that I've missed. So it's about that time again, huh?
Yes, it is.
So Bones will be joining us shortly. I'm sure Marcella will be joining us shortly as well, for those of you who are wondering. So give us some ones.
Grand Rising.
Oh, see? As if right on time.
Talking on mute for like a good 10 minutes.
Are you serious?
And realized I done hit star 6 and muted myself and never hit it back.
Wow. Grand Rising the boy. Grand Rising. Yeah, because I was wondering, I'm like, why is he quiet? I was like, maybe he doing something. So I was like, I ain't going to interrupt him.
Yeah, talking on mute.
Wow. At least now you know why I want nobody answering you, right?
Yep.
Okay, so as long as you know it's not personal. So, folks, let's go ahead and get this public service announcement out the way. And then we can go ahead and do what we do.
Grand Rising, Macadon 1.
So this episode of Cab Grand Rising, Improved Order of Red Indians, says who, is brought to you by Attackness Assembly, where the real work gets done. Attackness Assembly is a gathering of the minds that do the work. Attackness Assembly is a non-profit organization dedicated to raising up Indigenous Americans' voices by using genealogy, also known as family history, which is a study of families and the tracing of their lineage and history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigrees of its members. Our core values are the foundation of our company, which is essential to our success and serve as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision. And those core values are, but are not limited to, integrity, which is knowing and doing what is right. Respect, which is treating others the way you want to be treated. Responsibility is embracing the opportunities to contribute. And servant leadership is serving the common good. In Red Attackness Assembly, we are not here to tell you who you are. We're not here to tell you who you are not. And we are not here to get into your personal business, because it's your personal business for a reason. We are here to help you with your genealogy. And if you so choose, help you tie into your tribe, regardless of what that tribe may turn out to be. Whether it's American Indian, Native American, a house of Africa, or any European tribe. Whatever it is, we will offer our services at our disposal free of charge to help you tie back into your tribe if that's what you choose. Which we feel and believe and know for a fact that it's the best way for you to know exactly where to go and the best place to start, because that's where your foundation is. And our other goal is to help you to become financially independent so that you don't have to depend on anyone or the government for the welfare and being of your community, your tribe, or yourself. With that, I will turn over to the panel so we can get set to get started and head to the construction site.
Very eloquently covered once again.
Thank you, thank you.
We also have to give a shout out to the person who provided this information in the forum to go over today.
Oh yes, let me make sure. Let me check the members to see if we had any new subscribers today. Today was the 14th. So I am Flying Squirrel and Celestial Love have actually registered to the forum. So shout out to you guys, ladies and gentlemen. Good stuff.
Welcome.
And also there's been lots of contributions, and I believe it's from Marlon P. Make sure I have the email right. And Big Hawk also has been contributing a lot and dropping lots of jewels. So we want to say, we'll give you a shout out for doing that, because that is huge. This individual is listed as G. Muskogee. So shout out to you, sir, for putting that information in there. For whatever reason, I thought I saw Marlon P's name. So if I'm giving Marlon P the credit and Marlon P should not have the credit, please forgive me. Just let me know who you are in the chat so we can give you proper credit. But today, our build is going to be based off of that information that G. Muskogee dropped in the chat. Grand Rising, Ladarian Woods. Grand Rising, Enrique. Enrique has also been putting some stuff in the forum as well. So let's go ahead and prep the area. So we know exactly what's going on. Give me a second. All right.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required.
All right, y'all have heard the warning. Now to seal the deal. Alright. Y'all know where we at, and y'all know what we came to do. This is some very interesting information that was presented. And yeah. It's gonna be very telling. So let me go ahead and pull up the link. Bones, is there anything that you wanna say before we get started? Add, talk about information you want to drop?
No, so far so good at the moment.
I don't know he was gonna say that. Alright. Here we go.
Just leaving the school now.
I knew you were out and about.
It is that time again, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I often forget until I'm reminded.
I know, right? When your little ones are old enough to have little ones of their own and be grown, it does have a tendency to make you what I call amnesia.
Right, perspective.
All right, let's do this. All right, so I'm about to drop this link in the chat. Improved Order of Red Men. Grand Rising, Indigenous American Leo. My mouth does not want to work this rising.
You have some reading to do. I'm gonna need you to correct that.
Yes,
Tighten up.
yeah, I know. All right, here we go. Let me move this screen over here. Up this. All right, let's get it in, y'all. The source of this article or this information was provided by Wikipedia. And as always, well, I ain't gonna say always because there have been some cases where they didn't provide sources. There are sources and references for us to actually cross-check. There's also external links. Some of the stuff comes from the University of Kentucky libraries. And the organization also has a website that you can actually look up and do some research on. So shout out to G. Muskogee for dropping this on the chat and in the forum. And here we go. The Improved Order of Red Men is a fraternal organization established in North America in 1834. So check the time period, 1834. This is shortly after the Indian Removal Act has been enacted. So they're removing Indians to the west, out the Oklahoma, Kansas City area. Okay. Their rituals and regalia are modeled after those assumed by white men. Early in the morning, we are already having to come to a halt and rewind. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, women and men of all ages, this is a fraternal organization by white men called the Improved Order of Red Men. Despite the name, the order was formed solely by and for white men.
Huh?
That's a problem.
You don't say.
Doodle Vision says Red Man Tobacco. Wow. I didn't even think about that. He said Red Man and Method Man.
Ow!
It's crazy that it doesn't just say the Order of Red Indians. It has the audacity to say the Improved Order of Red Indians.
So they improved over who? That's the reason why that title is in parentheses. Or over Hugh.
Over Hugh, exactly.
So it goes on to read that the organization claimed a membership of about 500,000 in 1935. But has the organization claimed a membership of about 500,000 in 1935, but has declined to a little more than 15,000. I'm gonna let that sit for a second. I'm gonna let that sit for a little bit. Doodle Vision says secret society that took over after the Continental Congress. Wait, what? Doodle Vision, you can't keep dropping stuff and then going on text mute, but that's okay. We're gonna keep it moving. On December 16th, 1773, so of course we're going into the history, right? A group of white colonists, all men and members of the Sons of Liberty. Sons of Liberty. What do we know about the Sons of Liberty? Let's do a quick recap about the Sons of Liberty. I'm putting that in the chat. It's my Wikipedia, so you can do the research and get the resources and the references. So let's look at this right quickly for a brief recap. We have individuals who were once, all men were members of the Sons of Liberty. Okay. So who were the Sons of Liberty again? Macadon 1 says Pan-African, Pan-Indian. remember Pan-Indian, they was pro send these quote unquote Europeans home. So Sons of Liberty. Sons of Liberty were a secret organization that was created in the 13 colonies. So we know that in the 13 colonies, right, that there were many French that came over here under the guise of English, because the French did not establish colonies. The Spaniards did, and the English did. We have not found any records as of yet of the French establishing colonies. So there were many French that were in these colonies, because remember they got kicked out of France. The Huguenots got kicked out of France, went to England, helped England defeat Scotland, the Scots, and they became Great Britain after 1770. So this is 1765 with the 1765 Stamp Act. So right now they're considered European colonies. So it says 13 American colonies to advance the rights of the European colonists and to fight taxation by British government. It played a major role in most colonies in battling the Stamp Act in 1765. The group officially disbanded after the Stamp Act was repealed. Here's a problem. It officially disbanded. But did it really disband? Do secret societies ever disband? Something to think about. It says, however, the name was applied to other local separatist groups during the years preceding the American Revolution. In the popular thought, the Sons of Liberty was a formal underground organization with recognized members and leaders. More likely, the name was an underground term for any men resisting new crown taxes and laws. Now, why would these individuals be resisting new crown laws and taxes? Because they were French and they had no allegiance to the crown. Remember, they came from France. They were exiled to different parts of the world, England being one of them. Doodle Vision says sovereign citizens. Exactly. So because they had no allegiance to the crown because they weren't English, they like, this ain't got nothing to do with me. They were establishing themselves as indigenous to this land. Because remember, they had a long history with the Indians that were already here. So then it goes off and reads that the well-known label organizes to create an anonymous summons to a liberty tree. So it says the well-known label allow organizers to make and create anonymous summons to a liberty tree, liberty pole, or public meeting place. Furthermore, a unifying name helped to promote inter-colonial efforts against Parliament and the Crown's actions. Their motto became "No taxation without representation." Does anybody remember, well, anybody in the what they call the Mid-Atlantic, remember what was on the Washington, D.C. license plates for so long? For those of you who don't remember, it was taxation without representation. So let's just look at this Liberty Tree, shall we?
So they had no taxation without representation imprinted on the license plate?
Yeah, it was on license plates for a long time, yeah. Because DC is not a state.
Right.
So they were being taxed, but they had no vote. And they were not receiving state funds. But they were being taxed like a state. But they had no representatives. They had federal representatives, but they didn't have any state reps.
I see.
Dudovic says, Statue of Liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So let's look at what this...
That's you, not statue.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So let's look at this Liberty Tree. The Liberty Tree.
A quick update. I posted the picture from Michael Robinson.
Okay. I'll pull it up after I read this.
And thank you, Michael Robinson. Much appreciated.
All right. So the Liberty Tree, 1646 to 1775. Now this is right before the Declaration of Independence was drafted and signed and all that good stuff. Was a famous elm tree that stood in Boston near Boston Common. In the years before the American Revolution, that's where it stood and that's where the location was. In 1765, colonists in Boston staged the first act of defiance against the British government at the tree. The tree became a rallying point for the growing resistance to the rule of Britain over the American colonies, and the ground surrounding it became known as Liberty Hall. The Liberty Tree was felled by Loyalist Nathaniel Coffin Jr. in August 1775. So this is where they've held their first rally, if you will, for the protests of the Stamp Act. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shoot you a quick picture. Let me do this right quick. Let's see. For whatever reason, it's not working. It's one of them days.
Don't want to hear that.
What in the world? Okay. There we go. Oh. So that's a picture of the actual gathering of the tree. So it says the colonists under Liberty Tree, Castle's Illustrated History of England, 1865. So this is where they had their first meeting under the Liberty Tree. So I've already dropped that link in there so you can actually see it.
Makes you wonder why there's a mindset to cut all these trees down like that if you had this epiphany meeting under this tree. But anyway, I digress.
I know,
Stay
right?
focused.
But that's a good question. Because it seems to be a pivotal point in history.
You would
Right?
think. You would think. I believe actions before I believe words. Watch what you do.
Marlon P says, my question is, what stopped the influx of these Europeans before the 1400s if the Huguenots were already coming to the Americas?
Numbers.
And also there were other wars going on. Remember, the Europeans have always been fighting. They never stopped. They were always fighting each other. Remember, Spain and France they were constantly at war. Michael Robinson says, we need stronger steel toe boots. My right big toe hurts. Find somebody with a ratchet. See if they can.
I feel you, Michael.
Right.
I think I'm doing shoulder pads tomorrow. And a back brace.
Man, y'all got my head hurting
Matter of fact,
already. This rising.
Can I get one of them reinforced medieval night suits?
Wait, what?
You want the chainmail? I'm gonna have to try that out with you. The chainmail part of it. See if that helps.
Yeah, it's like we're going to have to go super industrial for protection with this info.
Gotta do something.
So those were the Sons of Liberty. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bones.
Oh, no, I'm just going to say something silly. That's it. Rabbit punches from inflammation. Got your kidneys hurting.
Oh, my gosh. He said rabbit punches. Good night.
That is how you feel sometimes, so he's telling the truth.
Rabbit punches? If anybody's ever boxed, they know how rabbit punches feel. They don't feel good. Not at all. Okay. Compendio says chopping trees equal conquest of existing governance and assimilation of it into the invading one. George Washington chopping down the cherry orchard in Manhattan on what's now Cherry Street, for example. Whoa! Come on.
I don't know if Copper comes in the room.
And even look at it this way. Our ancestors' natural habitat was wooded lands with the trees and stuff, right? So what do we know about trees and their root system? It's kind of hard to have flooded areas when you have a whole bunch of trees around, ain't it? Because by natural design, they stop the flooding. But now you start cutting up all these trees and removing them. Now it makes it possible for you to flood land. It makes it possible for you to change your whole ecosystem now. Therefore, the people have to leave and can't come back because their way of life has been completely ruined. What happens with animals when we cut down so many trees and stuff?
They leave.
Don't they start? They leave. Some of them get to the point they come in where we live at and don't even care. Walk right up on you.
You lose the entire ecosystems that way.
Yep.
Doodle Vision says, time to get out the new NFL concussion protocol hard hats. Michael Robinson says, I'm becoming a firefighter later on. I'm going to burn all fake history up. That's what's up.
Yeah,
don't worry, I'm going to help you.
I know that's right.
You're like, why they don't look and smell like water coming out them hoses? Hold up, that's gas.
Set it ablaze and let it burn.
And Du Bois says, yep, and they basically they remove your food source when you start cutting down trees. And Oak Cliff, and look, Oak Cliff always coming with these questions that make you go, I'm interested in knowing who was the first person hung from this here tree.
Oh, good question.
That deserves one of these sound bites.
I would take it as you knew it had to be one of them, because that's something from their culture that they've been doing over there with them Romans and stuff, crucifying people and hanging people.
Exactly.
That is true. Mm.
We're not gonna hang you. We're just gonna hit you in the head with a hatchet, tomahawk, take your skull, chop your head off. Just saying. But anyway,
Mm.
what?
Mm.
What happened?
Like, what did I just miss? Like, what?
Coming for that? Yep.
Mm.
They
Mm.
take you off from the root. All right. So now back to the Improved Order Red Man. So a quick recap, right? The Improved Order Red Man is a fraternal organization established in North America, and their rituals and regalia are modeled after what assumed white men thought of the American Indians. And despite the name, they are all, or were in some form or fashion, former Sons of Liberty. Now, this organization is for and about white men who are basically culture appropriating American Indians. And this is basically what they're doing. They were established in 1834. So they are basically culture appropriating or misappropriating the same American Indians that they're trying to send out west because of the gold rush. I don't know. Can someone say potentially Dawes Rolls? I don't know. Tell me.
Most definitely.
So then it goes on to
Laid
read.
out right there.
I'm sorry, Free, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, it's laid out right there. Just basically, when we see our side of history, and we're basically trying to like catch up to what they did and how a lot of this stuff happened, like on the desk or behind the scenes, how the pen was mightier than the sword and whatnot. When you start finding a whole entire organization like this that's been in the backdrop, messing with government and all kind of social affairs, it's very eye-opening. It should be very sobering at the same time. And it makes a lot of the circus that we see now in the media, in the government, make a lot more sense too, if you really think about it.
I mean, it does. The boy says they used to have 1,000-year-old fruit trees in Jamaica, in the cities of the major parishes. It says these trees, when cut, sprouted out streams of water. Whoa.
Wow. I've read about things like that before. That's fascinating to even think about.
Thanks for sharing. That's a good perspective.
Mm-hmm. And also, keep in mind, there's a reason why it's important that the American Indian doesn't take a seat or have his voice heard. Because when we don't, you get to hear a lot of the buffoonery that happens when we are, quote unquote, absent.
Exactly.
So, I'm done. I'll let you proceed.
Grand Rising Jay Susquehanna, he says, why I gotta get the blame for he says Grand Rising TMH, don't blow my high this rising. Yes, we know your high's natural. You don't want nobody to blow it, Jay. I will do my best not to, but hopefully you got your hard hat on. And you walking around. We're building and digging and correcting our history all at the same time. So just be careful, watch your step. I can't promise you anything. So we're going over the Improved Order of the Red Men. So we're in the second part. We're in the second paragraph of the chapter on history. And it reads, in the late 18th century, the Tammany societies named after Tammany were formed. The most well-known of these was New York City Society of St. Tammany, which grew into a major political machine known as Tammany Hall. A political machine used by fake American Indians. Doodle Vision says new and improved equals totally different product. Jay says I remember going to Tammany Hall. Hey, So let's do this again. The Tammany societies named after Tammany were formed. The most well-known of these was New York City's Tammany Society of Tammany, which grew into a major political machine known as Tammany Hall. So first, let's look at Tammany Hall to see what we get. Now put it in the chat. Alright, give me a brief second. This is going to be interesting too. Alright, Tammany Hall. Tammany Hall, also known as the Society of St. Tammany, the Sons of St. Tammany, or Columbian Order. Have y'all noticed that we have only gone in 3 paragraphs in, and there are 3 secret societies already?
Shows you how involved this really is.
All these organizations. Okay. It goes on to read, was a New York City political organization founded in 1786 and incorporated on May 12, 1789 as the Tammany Society. It was a Democratic Party political machine that played major role in controlling New York City and New York State politics. Wait. It was the Democratic Party political machine that played a major role in controlling New York City and New York State's politics and helping immigrants, most notably the Irish. Helped them rise in American politics from the 1790s to the 1960s. The boy says, hold up. Exactly. Grand Rising Superflies chick. Grand Rising Lady J. Glad y'all was able to catch the cab this rising. Jay Sasquana says, my grandma would go and pick up a little brown envelope. Jay, you may have to come on and tell us about that towards the end of the show. Doodle Vision says, and who was the main player in Tammany Hall? Aaron Burr. Stop playing.
Oh, wow.
Doodle, you can't keep dropping those bomb pellets and then just going on. Can't keep doing that, bro. Well, you can because you do, but you still can't. So anyway. So, the Tammany Society helped the Irish gain political stronghold in New York City, in New York State. It says it typically controlled Democratic Party nominations and political patronage in Manhattan after the mayoral victory of Fernando Wood in 1854, and uses patronage resources to build a loyal, well-reward core of district and precinct leaders. After 1850, the great majority were Irish Catholics. Stop. Y'all know the reason why this is so important, right? New York is a northern state, number one. During this time in the 1850s is when they are getting ready and they're prepping for the Great Reconstruction to happen. So you have a northern state that's ran by Democrats. Now, I don't know about y'all, But when you think of dividing the state down party lines, one would have assumed or would have thought or would have guessed or would have surmised that anything south of the Mason-Dixon would have been a Democratic state. And anything north of the Mason-Dixon, which is in Delaware, would have been a Republican state. Right? But we're finding that's not the case. That is not the case. The Tammany Society emerged as a center for Democratic Republican Party politics in the city in the early 19th century. After 1854, the society expanded its political control even further by earning the loyalty of the city's rapidly expanding immigrant community. Why is that important? Why is that important? Let's think about this. We're in the 1850s now. And if we recall that between 1820 and 1870, there were 7.5 million Irish that were brought over here. Where would they have been brought into? What would these immigrants would have been in process?
More than likely Ellis Island.
Ellis Island. Where's Ellis Island? It's in New York, right?
Yeah. You got it.
So if that's the case, and it takes 7 years to become a citizen, by the time we get to the emancipation, these people are already citizens, which is the reason why Ireland, New Ireland,
Might as well call it that.
has a stronghold in New York City politics, in New York State politics. Doodle Vision says, check out the ship's logs on Ellis Island. Bones, we do have access to those ship's logs, right?
Yep, posted up on the phone.
So that's a homework assignment. Ship's logs of Ellis Island. So now we have a better understanding of what's going on. So let's look at this. Let's put this together, shall we? You have the World Fairs, where there are millions of people that attend. Out of these millions of people, there are millions being processed for immigration. And they are being indoctrinated to all kinds of different tribes that they're going to run into in the Americas. So can you imagine these Irish immigrants who were once beholden to the Indians who were bringing them potatoes, seeing these quote-unquote Indians acted out behind some type of cage or in a zoo setting for entertainment purposes, to indoctrinate them to start to hate these individuals. So by the time they get to the Americas, their hatred and vitriol for these individuals who saved their lives turns to, we got to get y'all up out of here because y'all don't deserve this land. Now you start to understand why and how the politics shapes and grabs and basically choke slams our people. Because the people that are in charge at this particular time have a view of us that is not positive. They have a view of us that we do not deserve the riches and the spoils of this land that we have. Due to just acting like a bunch of wild Indians. Do y'all remember that saying? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes and yes.
So because of the theater at the World Fair and the human zoos doing this in processing of immigration to get set up to come over to the Americas by the millions, they have an ideology and a picture of us that it's almost impossible to erase.
Copper Indio adds that the viewpoint gets worse every generation. But she's so right. Again, why we have to get it right this time, why we have to fix it on our watch. It's imperative.
But now you get it why they say hate is taught. Whole race of people was taught to hate you.
Mm-hmm.
What makes them responsible? True indeed, they were gave misinformation, but they failed to do the research to make sure it checked out. They took what somebody said as law and ran with it.
And let's discuss that, okay? Because we're talking about indoctrination, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I got a problem with Bones, and I want somebody else to have a problem with Bones, and I tell people all the messed up stuff that Bones did, and I paint this picture of Bones, and you in the chat never get the opportunity to meet or speak with Bones, or choose not to meet or speak with Bones, and you take everything I say as gospel without asking for any proof, do you see how easy it is for me to get a whole, not just a whole chat, but millions of people to hate Bones? Just off of what I say, because I am viewed as the authority, because I have the most tenure, and because I am helping and I'm providing a service. That's how the colonized mind works. Let that sink in for a second. And debt's not always financial.
Yep.
If I do something for you first, your natural tendency is to be indebted to me because I offered you something. Whether it's information, whether it's a place to stay, place to come gather, a place to socialize, something that you did not have before, you are now indebted and beholden to me to listen to what I say, and you are no longer of the mindset that I will tell you anything that's going to harm you.
Bingo.
That's what has happened in the conscious community. You have people screaming colonizer, 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 and they're doing the same thing, and people are just eating it up without making them prove anything. So it's playing out live as we speak. So is there anybody that you have a negative opinion about, that you've never talked to or never figured out why there's a negative opinion about that person? If the answer is so, then the question that you should ask is, how does that make you any different than these immigrants that came over here and changed the laws to basically financially enslave our ancestors? Aren't you guilty of the same thing that they're guilty of? It goes on to read that the business community appreciated its readiness at moderate cost to cut through red tape and legalize mazes to facilitate rapid economic growth. The Tammany Hall ward boss, or ward healer, or the Ward Healer Wards, were the city's smallest political units from 1786 to 1938, and they served as the local vote gatherer and provider of patronage. By 1872, Tammany had an Irish Catholic boss, and in 1928, a Tammany hero, New York Governor Al Smith, won the Democratic presidential nomination. However, Tammany Hall also served as an engine for graft and political corruption. perhaps most infamously under Scottish Quaker William M. Boss Tweed. The boss is in quotations. In the mid-19th century. So let's go back for a quick second, because it talks about these ward bosses, right? What's a ward boss? Because I don't know what that is. A ward boss. In politics, a boss is a person who controls a unit of political party, although they may not necessarily hold political office. Numerous office holders in the unit are subordinate to the single boss in party affairs. Each party in the same ward or city may have its own boss. That is, the Republican boss of Ward 7 controls Republican politics, while the Democratic boss controls Democratic Party there. The reformers sometimes allege that political bosses are likely guilty of corruption. Bosses may base their power on control of a large number of votes. When a party wins, they typically control the appointments in their unit and have a voice at the higher levels. They do not necessarily hold public office themselves. Most historical bosses did not, at least during the times of their greatest influence.
What's a boss again?
Somebody that basically had control of the politics, and Doodle Vision called it right on the head. He said a mob boss, aka political party chairs.
Yep, went into politics.
So if you have
one person telling you what you need, one person telling you what you don't need, sound familiar?
So if you think about this, you could easily become an Irish boss if you got 7.5 million people coming into one area.
Yeah, you have the numbers.
Say that part again, Free.
You have the numbers.
Okay, the numbers. Okay, it's all about numbers, huh?
Yep.
They make a difference.
Think about it. They 7.5 million with them German 7.5 million. They clicked up and that made 15 million. And do you notice at the time that they're joining forces, they're separating us? Anybody notice that yet?
Yeah.
It goes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Ladarian Wood says, "Yeah, that sounds like some mob stuff." Bob Doodle Vision says Jack Nicholson on Departed was a boss. He ran Boston.
Oh.
Well.
Perspective.
Think about it. Where does the mob come from? These Italians, these Scots, Irish.
And we have to remember, if France was releasing its prostitutes and prisoners onto this continent in the early 1500s, and they were in control of England and Britain, and also in control of Ireland, don't you think they would be doing the same thing as well?
I mean, look at it this way. Let's take one of our neighborhoods. We done seen this play out. The faces and the names will change, but this right here, we done seen our whole entire life. Our neighborhood started real nice and this and that. Then what do? You start putting in the worst of the worst in the neighborhood to bring the property value down so you can come in and get it. You notice they put the worst of the worst around us.
Nothing new under the sun. You're exactly right.
Put us dead smack in the middle of the worst of the worst.
Something to think about. So, goes to talk about the 1880s. Tammany was building local clubs that appealed to social activities from the ethnic middle class. In quiet times, the machine had the average of a core of solid supporters and usually exercised control of politics and policy making in Manhattan. It also played a major role in the state legislature in Albany. Charles Murphy was the quiet but highly effective boss of Tammany from 1902 to 1924. Big Tim Sullivan was the Tammany leader in the Bowery and machine spokesman in the state legislature. In the early 20th century, Murphy and Sullivan promoted Tammany as a reformed agency dedicated to the interests of the working class. The new image deflected attacks and built up a following among the emerging ethnic middle class. In the process, Robert F. Wagner became a powerful United States Senator, and Al Smith served multiple terms as governor and was the Democratic presidential candidate in 1928. So, that's right, Ladarian. Was it no different than flooding the blocks with, they just use people? Yeah.
Exactly right.
So
they see that it works. So that's why they keep doing this in cycles until, again, our voice is heard and enough is enough.
Jay Susquehanna said the East India Trading Company owned most of the world's land. A popular saying in England was the East Indian owns the world, even the air above. Wow. So now we're ushering in all these mob types, right? And again, they do the same thing in the late 1800s and early 1900s that they do in the 1700s and the 1600s. They isolate incidences. You already have the unions who are ran by these bosses who gain political favor, and now they're controlling politics. They go down south to help take the land of the American Indians, the copper-colored swarthy Indians who stayed, and then sending them north so they can go work and be put into projects, while they then take over the land down south. And then because they don't need to unionize down south anymore, they now retreat back up north and run their rackets up north. Remember, they didn't unionize in the southern states again until what? The 50s and the 60s. So you're talking about almost 100 years. But they separate history and talk about the mobs as if it was a separate time in history during the early 1900s. Like it only happened after Prohibition. They make it seem like the mobs only came about after Prohibition because that's when illegal activity was coming about, but they had already been here. That's why timelines are so important. Macadon one says they come here and break every law in the books and then make laws so no one else can do what they did. Yeah, it's sickening, but that's how they do it.
Right.
That's the reason why you trying to break laws makes no daggone sense, because that's the quickest way to get you put in jail. Because that's a new form of slavery. Come here and break a law so now that we can take away your freedom.
And then when a senator have the argument, you don't have the right to lock me up. Like, come on now. You have to think clearer than that. Better than that. Our next move should be our best move.
Well, that's what happens when you listen to these mob bosses telling you stuff and you don't make them prove anything. So the question is, who has a colonized mind and who's a colonizer?
Right. Exactly. We have to undo this propaganda and begin to think tribally. Can't keep falling for the banana in the tailpipe constantly. Like, come on, when does it end? When does it end? But that's why bills like this are important, I feel, because the only thing that breaks that delusion or that sense of like people being lost in the sauce is the truth. Only the truth makes you free. You set the truth loose, it defends itself like a lion. You can't stop it. Nothing you can do. But let the truth be hidden and look at the nonsense that plays out in the absence of truth.
Doodle Vision says YouTube mob bosses. Exactly. Nothing new under the sun. Golden Moon says, didn't the mob family start or headquarters was in Louisiana, or was that a different timeline? I don't know. We have to look into that. And of course,
Yeah, the Italians that went to Louisiana, that's what we was going over all the last couple of days. The innocents.
There you go. There's your answer. And then Copper says there's a bust of Gestapo Mezzanini, creator of the Mafia in New York. Let me see. Somebody he sent a link. Let's see if I can pull it up. Wow. So first I gotta pull up the link that was the picture that was dropped in the chat. That Bones dropped. Macadon One says TMH got that tomahawk swing in this rising. I'm just
What he does.
Macadon, I'm just, just bringing information. Just doing what I do. Y'all bring it out of me. Y'all ask the questions. Grand Rising, Copper Tone Tony. Hope all is well.
Peace, Copper Tone.
Doodle Vision says the New Orleans mob ties back to Aaron Burr, not to be confused with Raymond Burr, old Ironside, aka Perry Mason. You know what?
He makes you laugh when he delivers the information, but you remember the information. Mm-hmm. He has a very effective way of making sure this intel sticks in your head.
So Bones, who sent this picture with Santa Claus in it? Because I want to give them proper credit.
The couple sitting around the KKK, Michael Robinson.
Okay, so this is a picture that Michael Robinson dropped. So shout out to Michael Robinson. I'm going to go ahead and share this right quick so y'all can see how crazy this looks.
Crazy! I haven't seen it yet, so I'm excited. Let me see.
There it is.
Crazy!
Macadon One says they remember that picture. This is my first time ever seeing it. I mean, what the... So I want y'all to take a look at something. You see the KKK member with what looks like a pole is in his hand, right? That might be a support beam. Look at his hands, right? Look at the complexion of his hands. Now pan to the left, and you can see the hands of the older couple holding the hands of Santa Claus, right? Look how light their hands are. Now look to the left. Look to the left of the old man. Look to the left of the old man. Look how dark their hands are in comparison.
Oh, wow.
Who's the KKK again? Anybody that believed in that ideology. It had nothing to do with your skin color, because you got to remember, you have melanated Italians and non-melanated Italians. You had matter of fact, you had melanated Europeans and non-melanated Europeans. Don't let the eyes fool you. Now, we all hide up under a sheet. We all uniform. All one.
Did anybody else pay that any attention, or was that just me?
Yo, I have never paid that any attention. Me, who's always looking for details. I don't know how I missed that. When I tell you, I am flabbergasted right now. It makes sense in terms of the information, but a picture really is worth 1,000 words. That makes you want to shudder. Like, what?
There's a good chance. How do you know that the old couple isn't the dude family member off of what we learned and what we have came across?
I want to scream right now.
Jay says, "See, look at the eyes."
Oh. Mm, mm, mm. Don't they call that a brotherhood too? Isn't the KKK considered a brotherhood?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but think of it this way: that could be one of their great grandparents in there. The problem is when
Easy.
you keep looking with the eye test, looking for the color of the skin, that means nothing.
Right. Michael Robinson, you should have told me to wear a hard hat before my eyes viewed that photo, because yo, this headache is dedicated to you, Michael Robinson. Thank you, sir. Oh my goodness. All right, I'm sorry. I ain't trying to stop the show. I'm just kind of taking it back. Wow.
So yes, that is definitely a bomb drop. That deserves a couple of bomb drops. We're gonna give him treat. We're gonna give him treat.
No, but I'm gonna say it again. If your father is a European, remember a lot of them had two wives, an Aboriginal wife and a European wife. The children from both these women are brothers and sisters, no matter what they look like.
That's so true.
We must never forget that when we go through these time frames, because we know that people were doing it. So that means you got brothers and sisters that don't look like each other. Out in public, you think they're strangers, but they know they brothers and sisters.
Doodle Vision says, he says, Lady Free, why did you put on the little plastic hat on the today, like the construction worker and the village people?
Seriously, did it?
Jay Sasquana says, the guy in the back, look at his eyes, the color around them. That's true, Jay.
Yep.
So I'm gonna drop some bombs for that find.
Remember, people, there are different levels and intensity of melanation when it comes to skin tone. Different levels.
Say it again, Bones. I was dropping bombs. You said
There's
there are
different levels of melanation when it comes to skin tones. We must never forget this. Remember, even going through, some people got labeled Negro because of the texture of their hair.
Right.
Or the way their nose looked, or because of one of their parents. It was so, think about it, we done seen full pale people labeled as Negro because who their mother was.
Macadon says, right, my second great-grandfather had two wives also, one European, one Aboriginal. Now are y'all starting to understand why doing your genealogy is so important? Because you by right have the ability and capability to tie into any limb on a tree that you choose to. Remember that. So which line in your line do you want to be defined? Doodle Vision says, look at President Warren Harding's eyes. Yeah, they dark. President Abe Lincoln's eyes.
This goes to show how careful you really have to be not to get imprinted with words or emotional codes that come from like lies and propaganda. Because, man, the human mind is so fertile. I mean, it's just so fertile. One word, one picture can create an endless stream of events.
And Oak Cliff says, yep, my great-great-great-grandfather had a white family and an Indian family. Papa was a Rolling Stone. Go ahead, Bones.
85% of all babies when born are what color? Come on now, let's be honest.
What do you mean?
what's the complexion of newborn babies? No matter what they identify them as, aren't all children very pale, and as they grow up, the melanation starts to activate in them?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a fact.
So depending on also when somebody marked this person down, I'm just showing different scenarios. A child born looking one way, a couple of shades lighter. But in time, they darken up. Depending on when you took that census depends on what you was classified as.
That's true.
You could have been considered white between the age of a newborn and 10. Think about it, 10 years later, now you Negro or black. Remember, there's a 10-year gap between these census. Who looked like as an adult exactly how they looked as a child? Who has the same complexion or anything?
Same hair texture, because the texture of your hair changes too.
Exactly. Depending on when somebody came out to see you would also have something to do on what you got identified as.
Antonio,
I noticed that in my own baby pictures. I'm 4 shades darker than that.
So let me go ahead and remind people where we at, because this is getting deep.
James said the elders used to look into someone's eyes and at their heels to know if they were colored or not.
Antonio,
What do they call the eyes? The eyes are considered what? The window to the soul. You know who I am by looking through my eyes. Remember what adults used to always tell you. When you conversate with somebody, you look them eye to eye.
Mm-hmm. And Antonio Baptiste says, my wife's ancestors were literally white on an early census and then black later. Same person. Yeah, it happens.
It takes what, 2 generations?
Yep. Sure does. So 1789 to 1840 talks about the Tammany Society, also known as, so we talked about them. So now y'all understand the importance of the Tammany Society and how they ruled New York and still rule New York to this day. All right, so let's continue. So we're going back to the Improved Order of Red Men. All this information is coming from the link, Improved Order of the Red Men. I'm about to put this back in the chat. This link back in the chat. Doodle Vision says Kwame, the polka dot rapper, would tell the women to look into his sleepy eyes. And some of y'all like, who?
She look at a lot of things differently.
Alright. So we talked about the political sheen in Tammany Hall. So here's something I want y'all to pay attention to and listen to, and I know y'all are. Doodle Vision says, new and improved tide with bleach because we get whitewashed out of history. You got that right.
Called iconoclasm. Mm-hmm.
So check this out. I'm reading from the order, the Improved Order of Red Men. Remember, these are white men who were formerly associated with the Sons of Liberty that created a secret society with the regalia of Indians and have a political party, a political machine called Tammany Hall. So we're talking about how that's where your mob bosses come from and come through. They were rallying their 15 million numbers from from Germany and Irish to politically control the Democratic Republican Party in the North. So that's where we at right now. And then we saw that picture of Santa Claus and some of the the swarthy clan members, copper colored clan members. Anyway, it says around 1813. Hold on, I gotta go back up. For the next 35 years, the original Sons of Liberty and the Sons of Tamina groups went their own way under many different names. So these organizations separated, or they went their own way, and they formed many different organizations. Whenever we talk about different organizations, they are forming either non-profits or not-for-profits to have political control.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just gathering together and giving themselves a name and acting. They are organizing, they have a form of governance, and they are running things so they can gain political clout and gain control of certain areas, potentially your area. So let's not mistake this or these movements for a band of people that have no organization and they just run up on some control. This is well organized and thought out.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not forget that. And another thing that I want to reiterate is that from what we've done as far as research, if you find anything that's contrary, please let me know. All of these people that have these organizations do their genealogy. They know who they are. You can't be a part of these organizations without knowing who you are and without people knowing who you are. So why is
genealogy is the same requirement.
So why is it that we don't do that when we were the ones that started that? Think about that. You want to know why we can't come together as a people? You want to know why it's easy to come in and break up stuff? You want to know why we have this crabs and barrel mentality? Because no one verifies anybody. We just accept everybody, and then when things run amok, we run around like chickens with our heads cut off, looking stupid. Because somebody left the door wide open and ain't nobody watching it. And it's like, well, I get along with everybody. Okay, you see where that got us. The organization grew in 1820s. But before we get to 1820s, let's look at this part. From 1813, a disenchanted group created the Philanthropic Society of Red Men at historic Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. Why'd I hit the brakes like that? Why'd I hit the brakes like that? Because we need people to understand something. If we're gonna talk about the problems, we gotta talk about the solutions. We have to address things. So, without getting too much on the soapbox or a rant, I'm gonna rewind this a little bit. Around 1813, a disenchanted group created the Philanthropic Society of Red Men at historic Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. Disenchanted means they're not happy with what's going on. So what do? They create a Philanthropic Society of Red Men. What is that? What does philanthropic mean?
I literally just posted that. Humanity, benevolence, kindliness.
AKA charity. AKA non-profit. AKA political control.
Hold up. Say that word again. You just said something stuck out to me for the very first time hearing that word. Charity.
Charity?
No. Charity. Cherokee. Charity. Cherokee. Charity. Woo.
They are phonetically extremely close. Shoot. Cherokee.
Charity. Mm.
The chair and the key. You have a chair and a key, it's like having a throne and the keys to the kingdom. Just following the line of thought. Interesting.
What is the largest American Indian?
Recognized tribe.
No, what is the largest Native American organization? Cherokee.
Get out of my head. Get out of my head.
That is the
Cherokee.
largest. That is the largest Native American organization, and they are a 501c3 when they started. Now they are sovereign nation.
Mm. 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 Ooh. Yo.
That's your fault for reading these words. See how you got my brain working now? I don't look at nothing the same.
Oh my goodness gracious.
So let's bring this back and put it together, shall we?
Mm.
Organizations and voting did not come from the Europeans. Having governance the way that we have governance now did not come from the Europeans. You cannot find a chief anywhere except for on the islands of America. Number one. Number two, our organizations were ran by voting and a form of democracy where there were elders that were voted in, and they were the ones that voted in the chief or raised the chiefs. Europeans had monarchs. There were totalitarian leadership. Please don't confuse the two. And don't you dare say that they created what our ancestors created. That's a colonized mindset. Number two.
All day.
Be clear.
If it was a European mindset, why are CEOs, CFOs, COOs all have the title of chief and not emperor or king? I'll wait.
Even to how businesses are set up, they're set up identical to tribes. There's nothing different between how you set up your business structure and how a tribe is set up. Same principles. The names of the staff might change, but you have all the same departments.
So if you go back and remember how our ancestors end up becoming and defining themselves as Black Irish and Black Dutch to keep their land, what did they have to do? There's one important thing that they had to do. They had to pick up a Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And they had to change their attire. So follow me. What's the easiest way to convert a mass group of people from Indian to Dutch without everybody have to be vetted? You change the chief to a pastor. You change the tribe to his flock. That way.
What happened? Think about what happened. When they did that, instead of a group of people electing the one person to speak for them, they flipped it so the one person spoke for all the people. Sort of like feudalism.
So you didn't have a bunch of people all declaring to be Dutch and Irish. You had the chief becoming a minister with a Bible and claiming his tribe or his congregation.
Wasn't it 4 melanated people that gave us the name African American? Think about it.
And there goes that charity again.
How are churches set up?
501Cs.
Okay.
501Cs.
Yeah. What did the churches turn into? Indian schools. What did the Indian schools turn into? Universities. What are your universities? How are they modeled? And why are they all sitting on Indian lands? I'll wait. See, y'all think this is a game. They're not playing with you. That's how you convert a mass group of individuals from Indian to Dutch religion. They realigned your allegiance from
I'm glad
being.
you said that. Religion, realign. It's just a realignment.
Who do you align yourself with? Are you aligning yourself with Indians, or you aligning yourself with the new owners of this land?
Another question. What was it called before the term religion existed? I'm just saying.
Bro, you got me. Tell me. I'm at a loss. What was it?
Wouldn't it just be spirituality? There's a difference between spirituality and religion.
Okay.
They make you think they're the same things, but no, they're totally different.
So true.
Religion comes from somebody realigning you and telling you what you're supposed to do. Spirituality comes from within self.
That's real. True.
So when you look at these tribes, if you and for those of you who have done this, when you look at these tribes and you go and see what their religion is, you'll be very interested to know that some of them have interesting religions, like the Catawba Sapani of South Carolina. Their religion is what is it? I just hang on to
Don't do it.
You said don't do it. Well, it's public information. They're Mormons.
The Mormon relatives.
They're Mormons.
Copper said a core of acculturation is also based on religion. That's why you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. It makes no sense to do that. He's absolutely correct. The same way we study all these other areas, people should take the time to study some of these religions. I'm not encouraging you to practice. I'm saying study. There is a difference.
Yes.
Doodle Vision says Mormons, aka Dutch. So they're telling you who they told you that they were. So the Catawba Sapani in South Carolina end up being Black Dutch, aka Mormons.
Na.
So the only thing they really had to do when it came to their organization was change the names or the titles. They didn't have to change their organization. They didn't have to change their paperwork, so to speak. The bylaws are still the same. If you look at a church's bylaws and you look at a tribe's bylaws and the way they set up, they're identical.
Yeah.
They're very identical. But because people have told you, and I'm talking about the proverbial you, not the people in the chat, not the people listening, but because people who are learned, have a scholarship, are aware, awake, and conscious, have told you that this is their, meaning the Europeans, information, you believe it and you never checked it. You never went on Wikipedia. You never went onto a website. You never done any research for yourself to realize that, why are tribes' bylaws similar to churches' bylaws? And you could go back and look up bylaws and constitutions of tribes before colonization. And if you really want to do some research, if you're not scared, go talk to some tribes that exist. There are over 1,000 state-recognized tribes. Let's not stay focused so much on the 5 civilized. Please, let's not get this twisted. Let's not stop listening to people that don't bring you any facts. Oak Cliff said it right. Church is the tribe, and the tribe is church.
Congregation. What do they call it? A congregation. What is a congregation? Gathering of people?
Right. And within that link that we were reading earlier, when you look at how they break down their different offices and what they call these different positions, it's clear and plain they're not doing anything but modeling their structure after the tribe, down to the very names, the labels, the titles, the whole nine.
Oak
It's
Cliff
great
No,
is
but they
switcheroo.
Oak Cliff is getting it. She said. Oak Cliff says, "Ghost dance, Holy Ghost." See, peace pipe,
Get it, Tiff.
crack pipe,
Exactly.
same thing.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, but look how they use your energy, your indigenous energy against you, or at least how they try to. You hear about the Ku Klux Klan all the time, but how close does that sound like Ku Klan? Same energy that would have had them like terrorized when they're trying to come over and colonize. Now they're trying to get you off your land, and they use that same vibration, switch it up a little bit within their harsh language, but it's the same vibration flipped on you.
remember the spell isn't the word. The spell is the definition of the word.
Initiation into deafness.
Intention. I mean, it has a lot to do with a lot of it. And again, when you know better, you do better. It's the reason why we take the time to try to sort all this information out. We're responsible for this information. At the end of the day, we're all responsible to redeem the time. Do something with it. Little hinges swing big doors. How you set your mind determines everything else. So get your mind right and let your focus be right. Watch everything behind you fall in place, because it has to. We're seeing the door that we left out of. We're seeing them rush into the door and set up shop, and then we're looking confused, like how we get ousted out here. Like what's going on? Well, here's our truth. So instead of using that narrative we've been running with all this time that gets us nowhere, that basically I'm an Indian, hooray, everybody leave, get off my land, let me live like I want to. How about we take the accountability and get it right? Starting right now, each one, get it right. Just that simple. And it's just a thought. I'm up.
Kind of funny. It reminds me of a line from a movie, from The Matrix, where they were talking about words. Where the dude told him a word is a word. It's not a way of itself. It's the emotional attachment that you place on these words that give it meaning, that give it power, that makes it become a spell to either help you or hurt you.
So true. We're life givers. Like, we are creators. By birth, we are creators. I don't know how some way, somehow throughout time, we've lost that sense of how important our mouths, our tongues, our words actually are. There's so much that we speak into the lives of others that, like, we should never say. So many things we should say that would foster a sense of life and growth that we don't say. That whole sense of finding your voice, there's a lot that comes with that. Do everything on purpose, with a purpose, because you are a people created with a specific purpose. Remember who you are.
And stop letting people tell you who you are, and stop letting people tell you who you are not. And the people that tell you who you are and who you are not the most are the people that look just like you. The KKK wore sheets for a reason, so you couldn't see their face.
They were Baptists, one of the leading religions of most melanated people in America. But the KKK were also Baptists.
I should tell you something.
Where is the Bible Belt?
In the South.
Oh, okay.
The Deep South, same place with a stronghold of the Indians. Convenience? I think not. Coincidence? No. And Antonio mentioned something about how the drums and stuff was added to the church later. Look at it this way. It was easier to assimilate people that way. If I'm allowing you to keep parts of your culture, now you feel like you belong, and it's a lot easier for you to pick this up. It's no different with the Romans did with the pagans. Let them keep a lot of their basic little rituals and stuff so they can feel like they were a part of it.
Yep. And when you look at their own history, a lot of times it'll tell you during this invasion, this pope thought to go ahead and allow people to practice their prior religious customs. And like this whole sense of religion like we know it, if you look at how it's morphed through time, that should give you another perspective in and of itself. But at the end of the day, I personally feel like we sit in a time of who told you? That's how I look at all of this. Who told you that? And why in the world are you believing that? And anybody who does do any kind of study or research when it does come to like the Biblios or, some of the religious or sacred texts from different cultures, at the end of the day, that question should ring a bell. Who told you? Who told you you were Black? Who told you you were a slave? Who told you this isn't your land? Who told you these people over here don't some way, somehow tie into your line because of things that your ancestors did in the past? Who told you you don't have a sense of responsibility to yourself and to the next generation? Who told you what your traditions now are? Who gave you a new normal? Who tells you that it's not important to do your genealogy or rediscover yourself? The first time a question like that in concept was asked was, who told you you were naked? Who told you to run around here with some fig leaves on? And then gave you a fig leaf religion.
So Antonio brought up 2 points. So I'm going to address the first point first. He says, why are churches more populated with women? Church leaders literally worked on providing an emotional environment to move someone to join the church. All the soft music and sadness is strategic. Okay, so Antonio, let's look at it from how we were indoctrinated. Who is the wisdom in our organization? Who is the wisdom of our people? It's our women. Who chose the leaders? It's our women. Who are more organizational and more in tune with what's going on? Our women. That's why churches resonate with them. It gives them that same sense of oneness. It gives them that same sense of tribe. That's why there are more women in the church.
And look at it this way. It's also, that program is also directed towards them. If you look at the studies of the church, women are 85% of the givers, the finances of the church, because they're the ones most likely that's going to have the attachments in there, doing the services, working with the children. So they're more likely to. It's designed that way. I think they did a study, I want to say about 8 years ago, when they showed the numbers that flipped. As the men were leaving the church, you had more women joining the church.
And your deacon and your deaconess boards in most Baptist churches, they're the ones that choose the pastor. Where did that concept come from? Choosing the chief. Who chose the chief? I'll wait.
So let's look what happened. Look what happened prior to that. They changed what you deemed and what you considered successful. Mm-hmm. So now you got people going to church looking towards, we all relatives here, let's keep it 100. You got the pastors now trying to be superstars, looking like icons. People going in there feeling like celebrities. Are they getting close to a celebrity? It's no different than reality TV show. And that's not saying all of them. That's just the majority of what they allow to dictate what we do.
Through the medium through which we receive information to keep us in formation. Let's not forget, YouTube is a medium.
Say this way, all churches got some type of scandal. Not all of them. A lot of churches have scandals. Why is it when it's ours, it's front line, main center on all news outlets? Can somebody answer this to me, please?
Goes with that propaganda and the who told you to have your butt in that organization doing that like that.
So let's look at it this way. The World Fair is now your cable outlets. The human zoos are now the shows.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Say that one more time, please. Say that one more time.
The world fairs are now your cable outlets. The human zoos are your shows. Your actors and actresses are the people who play these roles to give you a sense of who you are and who you should be.
And how you should go about doing it. I mean, most of our children, a lot of us from the last 2 generations, majority of what some of us learned about adulthood came from what? Let's be honest, came from what?
TV is raising them.
Television. Tell me, lie to me. Give me your vision. What's your perspective? Television. And what's one of the main outlets you get on television? But the media. Or a medium.
Everybody knows this. The rise of the church went right along with the reality shows on church life. Real pastors and such.
Yeah, they did.
That's right. They're related to the household, hence the housewives. Of course, they're posturing to the women first and foremost, like they always have. Then they go and they pull in another thing that postures to the women, the church, because they know how much control the women have over the church. They know how much more the women identify with the church. So that brings people who otherwise wouldn't be watching any of this garbage into it. And they watch it and they talk about it at work and they talk about it even after church. So this is how they stay in control of your mind. Entertainment.
Intercontainment, it sounds like.
And here's something I want. So here's something I want to address, because I'm looking at what's going on in the chat, and I can see the vitriol that people have towards the quote unquote the church. But here's a key point of indoctrination. It's not the church that people have this vitriol against. It's the 501c3 that contains the church that people have this vitriol about. Because remember, before we started doing the build on the 501c3s, the misconception or ideology was that all 501c's were what? Churches, or some form of charity that was controlled by who? The government.
Right.
So let me ask you this question. If I change the name of the church to a tribe, if I change the name of the pastor to a chief, if I change the name of the congregation to the name of the bands of the tribes, how do you feel about that church now?
I have a bad feeling somebody's going to do that. I have a really bad feeling.
It was already done. It was already done. Basically,
Right.
the Cherokees. The Cherokees were the first ones to institute a nonprofit institute their organization as a nonprofit structure that way, and they basically they changed the name of their church to their tribe. That's what they did. That's the reason why they're the largest. They're the largest congregation. But the reason why I said it that way, the way that I said it, is because people are looking at the church as a problem. The church is not the problem. It's the way we feel about the church that's the problem. Because all the church is a pseudo. It's a pseudo tribe.
But then that's a problem. I hate to have a disagreement on air, but I see that very differently. Because at the end of the day, that's just like saying that the school is not a problem. Like, at the end of the day, if you are in the middle of me and my truth, then you are the problem. I don't care what coat you're wearing or, what auspice you're under. If you're in the way of me and my truth, or me connecting directly to the land and to the source of all, you are a problem, and you need to get out of the way.
And we're saying
do not get a pass.
And we're saying the same thing, because at the end of the day, only thing changed was the title. Like I
The
said,
message, no,
Well,
the message.
the message
The use
changed.
of
The message changed because the title changed. That's what I'm trying to say.
right.
especially the use of it.
Right.
How it was used. The mechanism isn't flawed. The flaw came in the use of the mechanism.
Right.
All they did was use our ancestors' ways and just change the message, the signal. That's why it was easy to do, because we was already used to it. It's in us. They just changed the signal.
Right. It's not the institution itself as much, because the institution can do a bunch of different things, right? It is the objective and the agenda of the institution.
Mm-hmm.
So relate this to a tribe. Relate this to a tribe real quick. Let's port everything over. Let's call the church a tribe. Let's call the pastor the chief, and so on and so forth. Now, if the women, the elders, the clan mothers all decide on a new chief, and that new chief has an interest in changing the direction of the discourse and of the operation of the tribe, that tribe's going to become a very different tribe. It's probably going to make enemies it didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's going to lead its tribal members to actions they otherwise would not take. This is where I think we're getting into the trouble with it. And I'll relate this back to the church. Let's flip this back over so we can see it both in the same way. Creflo Dollar went and not that long ago got about $25 million or so. I'm ballpark, and I may be off, but he got millions of dollars, I'll say, from his congregation to buy a private jet. Okay, this was in the news and everything a few years ago. Was he taking this money from people as an example of what Christianity really is? Or was he working as a businessman to get funding from shareholders? Think about the terminology and how it matches up. Was he getting funding from stock or shareholders in the congregation to upgrade his own fringe benefits? It's the same thing. You see? So now his church in and of itself have probably filled up of very well-meaning congregants. But the problem is they've been misled because their chief, their pastor, has led them in the wrong direction. I just wanted to cite that as the example of where I think this is going with the change from the tribe to the congregation.
And exactly, and one of the things I want to bring mention to is that when you have, let's take this back to the Cherokee tribe. There were members of the tribe that were being removed because of fraud. They claimed that they were living on the land on a reservation when they was actually living overseas. So they got kicked out the tribe. How is that any different from a pastor who belongs to a mega church buying land or buying property under the church's name and using it for personal gain? It's fraud, regardless of the organization or the title. Fraud is still fraud. So you could be the chief of a tribe and be fraudulent, or you could be a pastor of a church and be fraudulent.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And what I'm saying is the structure is the same. The churches model their structure the same way a tribe model is structured. What is housed under that structure is what controls the people, is what dictates how the people think, feel, and move. So
look at the state of our people.
Right.
And again, that's
right.
why
And
I'm screaming.
Right, and I'm agreeing with you.
If you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem.
And
Tighten up and get it right, and then that's cool.
And I'm agreeing with you.
As of right now.
And I'm agreeing with you. And the reason why I made that parallel, I said if you change the name and the titles, then how do you feel about it? Because the reason why most people were having this vitriol reaction to 501c3s because they associate them with charity organizations. They associate charity organizations with church. But until we broke that spell, at least I hope we did, and help people realize that the church is less than 1% of all nonprofit organizations. Doodle Vision says, what's in the name? Everything. So churches are synonymous with 501c's. But there are at least 9 different entities that come with under that 501c. But the only one that gets the press is the church. The reason why they do this is because they do not want us forming nonprofits. They do not want us organizing. They do not want us to have any political say-so whatsoever. That's the reason why they do that. So we're saying the same thing. We're just saying it differently.
We're definitely saying the same thing now.
Yeah.
I'm back in my seat. Seatbelt on. Let's go. Beep, beep. Let's go.
But it's all good because the good thing about us, as people can see and witness, and we've exposed that we don't always agree on everything, or we always don't agree on the way that we come to a conclusion. That's just part of being us. That's how everybody is. So
you mentioned something that was key.
Go ahead.
We all know that nonprofits have the ability to influence elections.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's rewind to the 1960s. Now do you understand why the push was to break down the so-called black church at this time? Because they realized they had political power. Look at the shift in the church in the 60s, what they were starting to do. They were starting to reach out and get political figures. You notice when that happened, they had to change the narrative.
That is true. I'm sorry. I'm tickled at the chat.
Just rewind it and look at it. When you had King and on him, what started happening? When he made his adjustment, people started making their adjustment. That was the problem. They realized the power that they had. Under a nonprofit, it allows you to organize. Outside of that nonprofit and you organize like that, you can be considered a terrorist group. But under that nonprofit, KKK, they mount up any place, protest, don't nothing happen. Why?
Because they're a nonprofit and they are authorized to do so, and they have to be protected. Just like the Nation of Islam was a nonprofit organization, 501c. People bang on these organizations, but at the end of the day, you can do a lot. You can have schools under nonprofit. You can have police forces under nonprofit. You can have planes, trains, and automobiles under a nonprofit. You can do a lot of things under a nonprofit. So why is it that so many of our leaders, quote unquote leaders, self-appointed leaders, renegades, telling us what we shouldn't be doing? Who appointed them the leader of us? Last time I checked, a chief was appointed by the tribe, not by himself. Appointing yourself chief is a colonizer's mindset. Think about it. What chief you follow?
Because without being approved and voted in and given that authority, it's not power, it's authority, right? I mean, when we look at it as the way our people saw it, it was authority and it was a responsibility. That's Tuscarora proverb that says, "Man does not have power; he has responsibility." That's referring to the chief. It's a heavy burden to be a chief, and people have to understand that. But a lot of people look at the title of chief as a title of opulence and status. That's not a joke. That's not something you just wear on it's like a chain around your neck and say, "I'm this." There's a heavy responsibility that goes with being a chief. That the well-being of the tribe you're responsible for. The same as the office of the commander-in-chief of the United States government. That's a heavy burden. Notice how all of these men go in with their hair color, whatever it is, and they come out gray or white. It's a heavy burden, and it always has been, to be a chief. And we need to make sure that we not only hold each other to account in terms of this, or anybody claiming to be that, but that we also take that title seriously. If we're going to consider ourselves the American Indian, we have to take that title with absolute seriousness and sobriety. Now you get the mic.
Doodle Vision says a chief with no lineage and without being vetted. Who do they think they are, Melchizedek?
Oh, that's priceless. Word, Jane.
Right, because what gives the chief his authority? What gives him that responsibility? If he's not elected, if he is not permitted to be, or he's not deemed to be by his peers, be the chief, then what authority does he have? Again, that's like most of us going to somebody else and saying, I'm an Indian. And anybody else that you meet will say, oh, okay, well, what? Prove it. Right?
Exactly.
So if you can't prove it, if you can't prove that you've been given this authority, that you've been given this responsibility, then who are you? And why are you here? It's questions we have to ask.
And this is not, because I want to confirm something. This is not a knock for people who have actually put chiefs in their titles, because most people did that because to them it's a title, and I get that. But I must implore you that if you do have chief in your name, please consider the ramifications of that when you're dealing with tribes that are watching this. Because at the end of the day, regardless of how you feel about that title that you chose, there are people who have rituals, who have traditions of how chiefs are chosen, that are watching not just this YouTube channel, but all YouTube channels. And they look at the words that come out your mouth. They look at how you do things, how you say things, and how you speak. If you're not speaking from a position, or you're not speaking from a perspective of speaking for the tribe, then the question that you need to ask is, how are you then a chief? And how do you have that title? It's no different than going around in society calling yourself a doctor and you don't have a doctorate. You wouldn't do that.
Right. You wouldn't call yourself a general if you had never served in the armed forces, would you?
So why is it, and again, I'm not attacking people, because I know people do things and they're looking at it from the perspective of a title, but at the end of the day, what's in a name? And you have to understand, how are the chiefs of these tribes looking at you when you chose your name and you don't have a tribe, and the tribe then give you that name or give you that title? You're showing disrespect to the original individuals that you're claiming that you're a part of. That's no different than a European disrespecting the title of a chief, but respecting the title of a doctor. So you're going to respect the title of a doctor, but you're going to disrespect the title of a chief. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bones.
No, I get it, because you'll have some that'll say, oh, why should we do that? And the tribes don't come out and help us. Look at it this way. Now, many should know that tribes are non-profit organizations. So this non-profit organization is supposed to come around and take a chance on finding out if you their people or not, taking a chance of losing the resources or the barely little minimum resources they're getting now. When it would make more sense for us to do our due diligence and find out where we fit in, so we don't damage what's already set up in place. Instead of being selfish, taking on the me, oh no, they need to come to me, they need to come find me.
So I'm not banging on, or I'm not calling out people who have called themselves chiefs. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But if we're going to be honest, and we're going to look at things for how they operate and how they run, we have to look at it from the standpoint of those people who have been voted in as chief, and show them the same respect that we would show the colonizers who have their titles, who basically copied our system. So how is it that we're going to claim that we're honoring our ancestors, but we don't honor their ways? but we honor the ways and the traditions of the colonizer. That makes no sense to me. So just think about that, please. And again, I'm not hating, and I understand the perspective and I understand the viewpoint. But if we're going to truly be tribal, let's be tribal in actions and deeds and not just words. Go start looking at some of those constitutions of those tribes and see what the council does, what the council is responsible for, what the chief does and what the chief is responsible for. Most people, if you gave them the responsibility of the chief, they would not take the title. I promise you they wouldn't. And the reason why I promise you they wouldn't, because how many people have seen the information that we provided where you can be the chief of your own organization and you don't want to do it? Think about that. Same responsibility. You have to get yourself a board, and that board has to choose a chief in a nonprofit organization. We can't even get people to do that. So how is that you want to be chief of a tribe and you don't even want to be chief of your own nonprofit, which is the same thing as a tribe? I don't watch what you say. I watch what you do. And your actions will tell on you.
Ooh.
Hold on, Doodle Vision says, I bet Dofa Degrees didn't pass out Big Chief tablets for the back to school drive.
I was just responding to that.
Celestial Love says, hey, I have a thought. If the chiefs are the pastors, then who are the nuns? Okay, so Celestial Love, help me with this. What's a nun? Golden Moon says, I missed a lot feeding this dang horse dog of mine. And the reason why I asked that question, Celestial Moon, I'm not asking to be funny. I'm just trying to find the correlation between the nun with the pastor, because you're basically talking Catholicism when it comes to nuns. And when we come to pastors, we're dealing with Baptists. Protestants. Who are against the Catholic Church. So from that standpoint, there wouldn't be any nuns. There would be no nuns. So there would be none. Pun intended. David Corey says none equals nobody. So hopefully that answered your question, but I was not trying to be facetious or funny. Doodle Vision said the chief on the Justice League had bootleg powers. All he could do was get bigger. I could eat bread for a week and get bigger.
Oh man.
He says, don't start none, won't be none. So for those of you who came in late and heard what you would deem as a rant, what we were doing was basically talking about a solution, because we're not going to give you a problem and not give you a solution. And one of the biggest problems is the way that we as a group look at the title of chief, and we as a group look at what 501Cs represent. And we as a group have been indoctrinated to think about these nonprofit organizations, and we're totally forgetting those are your original tribal structures. But yet still we claim that we are Indians. How you going to be Indian if you don't do what Indians do? It's not the title. So, yeah, it's what's in the name. What you call yourself is very telling. But what you do inside of what you call yourself tells the truth. That's why it's very important. That's why when people had names in the tribes, their names changed because they grew. You didn't have the same name as a child as you did as an adult. You grew. You changed. So then your name or your title would change. So that's what
you know. The quickest way to influence in this system, it is through a nonprofit. Nonprofits have members. members. Through these members and enough of these members, they gain enough influence to affect politics and laws. Why do you think companies are able to change laws? Because they have enough members allowing them to go get enough lobbyists to set law.
And again, your 501c4, your 501c5, and your 501c6 are not only encouraged by the IRS, but have the authority of the IRS to influence and affect politics. Don't believe
They can
me.
spend.
Go ahead, Bones.
They can spend up to 49.9% of their income towards an election or a candidate. And what's the minimum that they're allowed to bring in? Oops, there is none.
Indigenous American Leo says pastors are using the congregation as employees. That's why you receive a W-9 during tax season. So Indigenous American Leo, let me correct something. You're on the right track. A W-9 is what a consultant gets. A W-4 is what an employee would get.
Ain't a pastor collecting a consulting fee? Let's be honest. They know what they do because he's consulting
Wow.
you.
Right.
They doing the right thing. He's a consultant.
That's right.
It's
And you
like
notice,
going to therapy. Every Sunday you're going to therapy, and he's your consultant, helping you get through the week
yep.
to your next
And-
therapy session.
And that's also why you'll notice in a lot of denominations, pastors aren't permanently assigned to a church. They'll work for a while at a church, but then they'll go on to go somewhere else. And some even have conferences where a pastor will be registered with a certain conference, go to in that conference and work, and then maybe move on to a different church in the same conference or change conferences or things like that. Yeah, it's organized in a very similar way.
Yeah, a consultant.
So go to Moon. What we were talking about was the improved organization of Red Men, which were nothing more than Europeans basically stealing the culture, regalia, garb, and ideology of American Indians and created a secret society that in turn ushered in total control. When I say total control, I mean that total control of New York through the Irish and German community to have a political hold on these people. And then they started infiltrating and helping with the demise of our people. And so when we started looking at the organization, how things are broken down, at the end of the day, when we ended up changing from, when I say we are talking about ancestors, end up changing from Indians to Black Irish and Black Dutch, we did it through the church. That's the only way that you can mass change your status. That's the easiest way to change your status. You have a chief who becomes a pastor, and you have his tribe who becomes a congregation. So everybody in that congregation would automatically belong to said church. Therefore, you can change the identity, which is the reason why the Bibles were important. Because where were the Bibles? You had Bibles in church, and you had Bibles that you could take home. Well, before you were in India, you didn't have a Bible. So you had to go where to get the Bible? You had to go to church. So the best way to claim that you were Dutch would to tell the enumerator what church you went to. No longer what tribe you went to. Because if you claim the tribe, then you was Indian and he got sent you out west. If you told him what church you belonged to, then you was cool. You ever notice when a person, think about this for those of us that used to be in church, right? We used to be in church. We used to go to church. And you would tell somebody, I go to church, they'd be like, what's the first thing they ask you? Well, what church you belong to? Where do you think that came from?
What tribe you belong to?
Mm-hmm. Same thing.
Mm-mm-mm.
So that's what we were talking about. And so we were talking about how we went from talking about the church and how people have strong hatred and strong vitriol for the church because of what the church has done and what it has committed to do. And what I was saying was that the reason why we have that vitriol is because of what the church did to our tribes. But that church sits in the same spot that our tribe sat in. So the name change, which changed the intent, which changed the effect. And in order for us to change the intent and the effect back, we have to go back through the door that we walked out of, which is not through the door of the church, but through the door of the 501c, which is where our tribes live. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
Add this layer to it. Now add this layer to it. Everything we done talked about, now let's see how important the census really is. Now with this census, I know how many people are on the land and how many people coming in, making it a lot easier to gerrymander particular areas so we always can win elections.
That's the perspective, don't it?
Census, again, is for the allotment of resources. If you want to guarantee your group is always dominating the resources, I can use the census and redo the districts. Break up particular groups so their numbers are just small enough so they had the illusion of say so, but in the end, don't have the numbers for it.
David Corey asked a question. He says, who made the church? They did. This is our people. This is to our people.
But what is an original church? See, we have to realize the hijack here as well. The original church is any place people gather to express their spirituality. When did we focus on it becoming a building, a physical structure? Who told us that?
Antonio Bessie says, trying to tell y'all this democracy is non-existent. No, this is not a democracy we live in. Our ancestors ran off a democracy. This is a republic disguised as a democracy.
And church is an enterprise.
Lectio Difficilior. Remember, just because they call a thing, you got to look at the thing that's least like that thing, and that's what that thing is.
Yeah, when you look at the founding of what we now call the United States or the federal government, they looked at it as a democratic republic. It was people, the democratic in that demos, the people would show up and they would cast a vote. Then their representatives would actually make the election. Like TMH and others have said here, there's a group of folks that are set up. They're usually like electors at the federal level, electoral college. They are the ones that actually make the decision, but they take the people's say, which is the democratic part, into account when they make said decision. This is how you have things like the 45th president having won on electoral college votes and not necessarily the popular vote, because the electors were the ones that decided in certain areas to do so. And like Bones was saying, the census is partly used for the census is used for allocation of resources. Well, in every corporation, you have human resources. So the demographic or the democratic part of this is the human resource. And so if they know how many people are in an area, they can, like you said, they can slice it up, they can dice it, and they can set it up so where you have a lot of people who think they have a choice, but they may not necessarily in the end, because they're not the ones electing the chief. The electors are.
Which goes back to what we always say. If you want to make a change, you got to start at home. People show out, and they show up for the major elections, but they don't show up for the local elections, which makes no sense. And then they complain that nothing goes right. Go ahead, Bones. Oh, Copper, sorry.
Oh, no worry. I was just going to say that's more of the democratic process at the state and local level.
Right.
Because you don't need electors to determine who the governor is. You don't need electors to determine who your congressman is. Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, the republic part is for the federal government exclusively. In that sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, this is a solution, not the solution. And at the end of the day, we can only tell you what we know works. I don't know everything. I just know what I know. And this is what I know. The door for us to take back what was in some cases stolen from us, and in some cases we gave away, that door is wide open. And many of us are walking right by it, want to use some other process that is illegal, and wonder why they're getting locked up.
Yeah, the door wide open, but you trying to go to the door that got 4 or 5 deadbolts on it and no keys, and wondering why it won't open. What?
You're going to hang a petition on the door and hope that it opens. Okay, we'll see what happens with that. So here's what I say. Here's information that we present. Again, this is a solution. Find out who you are. Because once you know who you are, now you know where your foundation is, and now you know where to start. You cannot start until you find out who you are. I'm sorry. No one has proven that that works without knowing who you are. That is the first thing that you must do. Because if you know who you are, check this out. If you know who you are, then you know where and when you are. And now you can start from there.
That's
Yeah.
some good foundation.
After that, you make the decision of if you want to tie in or use whatever legal means that you can to move from there. But until you know where and when you are, you know how when you go to a mall or you go into a place where they have, those boards that says you are here? If you don't know where you are, you don't know where anything else is, and you don't know where to go. Why is it that that concept, when it comes to us as a people, makes no sense to many of us? Where are you? Who are you? Could it be that you're possibly operating from a place of where you're not supposed to be? Could the reason why you have so many allergies and you feel the way you feel is because you have no business being in the location that you're located? I don't know, because I don't know who you are and I don't know where you are. Only you can answer those questions. There are millions of nonprofits that are thriving. There are thousands of tribes that are thriving. So don't tell me it don't work. And there are millions of nonprofits that are ran by people that look like us that are actually copper-colored American Indians. Don't tell me it don't work. Show me that it don't work, because I can show you that it can work. And while I'm in the process of showing you that it can work, we're doing it, and it's working. Again, proof is not a problem until it is. So instead of going back and forth doing all this bickering, show and prove. Show your work. What are you doing? Who are you helping? How are you being a benefit? Talk is cheap because it don't cost much. But actually, talk is expensive on YouTube because people are paying for it. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me how.
Paying for talk?
Say what? Yeah, people are paying for talk.
Why?
That's a question that I want to know.
Conditioning. See, if you look, like I'll go back again to that time, to the switch in the 60s. The conditioning started very, very heavy, to the point to where instead of getting up and going out and actually making change, we just got comfortable with complaining about the problems. They got us so figured out, they know we're going to show up, complain about it, give it 2-3 days, we go back home, business as usual.
Mm-hmm. And Antonio, he brought up a very good question. He says, in regards to the way of thinking, we have analyzed the mistakes of our ancestors. What about the mistakes of our parents in the civil rights movement? We've already analyzed the mistakes of that civil rights movement. Our parents were part of that civil rights movement and they got swept up in it. We allowed organizations, aka nonprofits, who had no intentions on helping us, represent us. We're doing it now. It's the same thing. It's the same song, different music. I mean, the same beat, different music, different note.
Right.
Look at it this way. Oh, go ahead, Capo.
No, I was going to say to Antonio's follow up. Part of what we're looking at now, what we've been covering in the past shows, especially the ones that had where the material was on the civil rights movement and that generation and the generations that led up to where we are now, there were provisions there that most of us completely overlooked. That was part of what we were talking about with the 501 group of institutions. These are all things, and HUD as well. These are all things that were given out and provisioned in the Civil Rights Act that most of us just overlooked because we saw integration. Most people saw integration, and most of the corporate news at the time covered integration. They covered, so-called black children going to white schools and so forth. They covered that aspect of it, but they didn't go into detail about what we were actually getting out of the Civil Rights Act. They didn't cover what things we were putting in, because and about the election thing, when you look at how many of these groups help elect and fund the campaigns of politicians, these are nonprofits. These think tanks are nonprofits. Think about this. They are working under some of the same codes that our churches are. And they're allowing money, because the laws are written this way, they're allowing money to go to from these think tanks rather, to these campaigns to help get not just commercials, but to help get funding for certain candidates. This is how all of this is working. And we haven't covered this like in depth or specifically, but the things we talked about with the 501 are what's going on the political spectrum as well. This is how they're getting in the door. This is how candidates that people you've never heard of from your community all of a sudden getting a sheriff's position, or getting a delegate's position, or getting a representative or a senator's position, state senator. From there, they're going to the full state level, and from there they're going to the federal level, because these same nonprofits are helping to fund their campaigns, giving them extra funds, giving them access to local resources. I don't just mean in terms of going to this city and getting a venue for a speech or pep rally, whatever, but also voter lists. You see, human resources are still a part of this, and they're utilizing that. This is how Obama was able to get so many people and so many lists together. I worked for the Obama campaign back in 2008, and I can tell you they had a massive list of voters at the local level. They knew who everybody was. And we canvassed. That was done through the nonprofit that helped his campaign. So that's how we're seeing this happen. And if we can tap into that, then we can start putting people in these places that represent us.
Thanks.
Bones, you about to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, who can tell you the needs of the people better than the people? And I say this to add on what Carter said. If your local representative does not represent you, then that's where you start. Even if it's not you, you find the like-minded people around. Even if you have to start educating the next generation to start taking these seats, we got to start at these ground levels.
And here's something. Free, was there something that you want to say? Because I didn't want to cut you off. I know somebody was about to say something.
Oh no, you're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So here's the thing that we have to be willing to understand. Antonio says, side note, watch the movie Brexit. And we love the questions that Antonio posed. That's the reason why we don't have a problem answering. Because at the end of the day, we challenge y'all to challenge us. So please keep the questions coming. Here's the one thing that I find that we are as a society, and us as a people specifically, are not willing to do. Let go of time. What do I mean by that? We don't want stuff now. We want stuff right now. And if we can't get it right now, we become very disinterested. So how does that affect what we're doing today? The question keeps getting asked, what do we do? What do we need to do to make sure that we don't make the same mistake that we make? Before anything can be done, We got to let go of time. And what do I mean by that? We're so time conscious that if things don't happen within the next 5 minutes, next 10 minutes, the next 3 months, the next 6 months, the next 12 months, the next 2 years, the next 3 years, then we feel like we're wasting our time. Spells are in words, right? If we look at how our ancestors break things down, they didn't run words together. Everything was broken down by syllables based off of the vowel. So what would time actually be today? Tie, me. Being bound by time. Time, T-I-M-E. Tie, me. Who is it tying? It's tying you. And why is it tying you? Because if we're not willing to accept that what we're doing today, we may not see the fruits of our labor, but it's going to help 7 generations, then we might as well stop now. If you're not willing to do the work without seeing the result, but know that it's going to help your generations, then get off this chat, get off the YouTube, go back to what you was doing. Because the thing that we forget or we choose to ignore is that the Europeans had a 200 to 400 year plan for us to conquer us. Not 2 to 4 minutes, not 2 to 4 hours, not 2 to 4 years. 2 to 400 years. So if you are under the impression that you're going to undo 400 years of a plan that is still in process and growing today, you think you're going to undo that in 2 to 4 minutes? This is not for you. Let me tell you that right now. It's not for you. And I'm not saying that to discourage you. What I'm saying is you have to understand that if we keep looking at the clock, excuse me, if we keep looking at the clock and being bent up, well, this hasn't done by this time period and this isn't done by that time period, then we are already up under that spell still, because our ancestors were timekeepers. We weren't kept by time. I'm going to say it again. Our ancestors were timekeepers. We were not kept by time. We went from being timekeepers to being kept by time. If things aren't done by this time, then it doesn't work. If things aren't done by that time, then it doesn't work. You saw proof of 3 individuals just graduated from college, and they were able to do something from that was a concept in April, and they making it come to fruition in August. And you got people that's been on YouTube for 3 years and they ain't gave a book bag to nobody. So who's conscious on who is focused on time? Were they focused on time, or were they out doing the work? Putting your head down, do the work, then look up, see where you're at, and then move forward from that. So I'm not saying that to beat up on people, but I'm saying that if you're not willing to do the work with the potential of you not seeing the results, but knowing that it's going to help your future generations, then this is not for you. And I'm not asking you to do something that's illegal, immoral, or unethical. What I'm asking you to do is be committed. And most people have a problem with commitment. So the excuse is, well, the government is going to keep us from doing this, and the government is going to keep us from doing that, and they're always going to stop us. Well, if that's what you believe, then who am I to tell you that you're wrong? My job is, again, my job is not to tell you who you are, and my job is not to tell you who you are not. My job is not to tell you that you're wrong, and my job is not to tell you that you're right. But this is what I know here at Talking's Assembly. Everything that we're putting our hands forward to move, and as long as we stay on code, it works. And you're seeing it work. That's all we can do. All we can do is be an example and expose you to what we're doing. If you choose to do that, great. If you choose not to do that, great. Do what works for you and yours. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to live with the results of what you did or what you did not do. So hopefully that answers the question, because I'm going to continue to say the same thing. Anybody on the Talking's Assembly that has a microphone or calls in, you know what we stand for and what we represent. That's why we do the public service announcement. Do your genealogy. That's where everything starts. Once you know who you are and where you are, then you'll know what needs to be done next. We keep repeating the same mistakes because we don't clean out our own house. That's number one. We still got people on YouTube commiserating with scammers and acting like they don't. We can't put anybody any place until we get rid of the scammers in our own house. And why is everybody ignoring that? People talking about changing stuff in government at the federal level. How about start with changing stuff in your house? How about start with changing stuff in your neighborhood? How about start with changing stuff in your county, your region, your district? How about doing that? People looking at this massive growth or this massive invasion of changing stuff federally, and they're not even willing to change stuff in their own neighborhood. Why? Because that's where change starts. Change starts with you. And if you're not willing to change nothing in your surrounding area, how in the world are you going to change something outside of your surrounding area? It doesn't work that way. Where does the ring of the first ripple of a pebble start? Does it start outside? Does it start like 400 ripples outside of the pebble? Or does it start with the initial ring that the pebble creates? It starts with that initial ripple that pebble creates. And the size of the pebble determines the size of the ripple. But as it goes out, then it expands. But it cannot expand until it starts at that one single point. Home. Where's your home? If you don't know where your home is, there is no pebble. There is no ripple. I'm sorry, the message is not going to change. So as many times as y'all ask the question, and we love the question, you're going to get the same answer. But we understand because it's frustrating. But at the end of the day, we have to be committed. And that's one of the biggest challenges that our community is facing. We're not, as a whole, we're not committed. And if you think about it, leadership is nothing more than knowing where you're going and walking there without worrying about who's following you. Because as you continue to move forward and show and prove what you're doing, people will follow you. But if you're worried about somebody following you before you get started, you'll never get started. You have to be the first one willing to take that step in your home, in your community, in your district, in your region, then in the country, and then on the continent, and then throughout the world. Start at home. First, you got to find out where your home is. I relinquish the mic.
Fire department showed up yet, y'all?
What you say, Bones?
No, I think somebody on the panel called the fire department.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep spraying the base of it until they get here.
All right, bet that up.
All right.
But as always, I love the chat. I love the questions. And please don't confuse my passion with anger or frustration, because it's not. I understand where we're at, and I understand your thoughts, and I understand the frustration. But at the end of the day, if we're not willing to commit, then what's the point? Think about this. If you knew that it was going to take 20 years to set the record straight, would you be willing to do it? Would you be willing to invest 20 years to set the record straight? What if it only took 2 days? Would you be willing to commit to 2 days? Here's the question. Well, here's the answer. I don't know how long it's going to take. So just continue to recommit every day. And that's the easiest way to start. Antonio says, where's Al Sharpton from? That's the answer to all our questions. So let's go ahead and let these good people get on with their day, because it's we hit up on 11 o'clock hour. Let's go ahead and give our salutations. Ladies first. Let's start with our wisdom. Free, what you got for these good people before they go on with their day and be productive members of their community?
As I said earlier, undo the propaganda and begin to think tribally. The only thing that's going to break this sense of delusion is the truth. So no matter how many times you have to either go over the information or get into groups and talk about the information, just keep it alive. And the more you do that, the more it becomes like an active everyday part of what you're actually doing. And again, the end game is to be able to see the fruit of your labor or see the results that come from the works of your hands. So continue to do your genealogy, continue to be diligent in your studies, continue to, help your fellow brother or sister around you. If any way you can contribute to be an effective part of change to their life, then, just be more community minded, more tribally focused. Because when all first things are first, all second things follow. And this truly is a matter of remembering, taking our proper place, and living out the destiny that was always put out before us in the first place. But accountability comes first. So much love to you as always, and until next time.
Thank you, Miss LJ Free. Appreciate you as always. No sellout. What you got, brother? You love doing this to me, don't you?
Yeah.
Go ahead, boss. You got it.
I couldn't find the screen to get back to the mute button. Appreciate everybody for coming out today. As usual, the link's in the chat. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections, email us at tachinistassembly@gmail.com. Peace, y'all.
Copper Indio, what you got for us, bro?
Thank you, brother. As always, I am humbled, and I am very honored to be able to be among a fine panel of people, of individuals that are like-minded in the sense of pursuing knowledge. I'd like that we all, the panel and the chat, have different perspectives and different views, and that we can all get together, express those, understand them, and take something away from all of them in a constructive way. We don't spend our time bickering, we spend our time building. And that is a great thing. I thank you all for all your questions. I thank you all for all of your opinions and viewpoints. And if you think that we're done for the week, we're just getting started on the stuff that really defines how we got to where we are. There's a lot to come. And I cannot wait to work with this panel to present all of this to you all. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Awesome. Appreciate you, Copper. Always the information that you provide and the way you deliver it. You could truly, as anybody on this panel, could carry a show by yourself. And I could listen to you all day. So, but that's just me being biased.
Appreciate that.
Much love and respect to the chat, the best chat on YouTube. You are the most intelligent, most active, and this chat has more leaders than I've seen in any chat. And the reason why I call you leaders is because you don't just accept stuff, you ask questions and you challenge us. And I continue to thank you for that and continue to encourage you to never stop challenging us. But don't just challenge us, challenge everybody. Make them show and prove who they are. Make them show and prove what they do. Don't take what they say for face value because of a title, a perception, or an organization. I want to send peace, love, and much respect to the new subscribers and those that are just listening. and taking this information and doing what you do to help your communities. We definitely appreciate you, because without you, you're the numbers. You allow us to do what we do. You're the individual that we and the chat are talking to, and hopefully this information is helping you and your community, your relatives, and hopefully your tribe. So again, we're here to help. Our job is to make sure we present this information in the best way possible, because we're growing and exposing this information together. We reach a lot of aha moments while we're live. So hopefully y'all see that, feel that, and know that we're doing this together. There are no master teachers in this panel. That's why there's a number at the top of the screen, and we encourage people to call in. And as long as you're respectful, you'll be respected. With that, I relinquish the mic to Bones H. McCoy so he can give you his salutations, and then we can be out. Take it away. I relinquish the mic.
All right, thanks, CMX. First of all, I'd like to thank the panel, the chat, everyone that's listening for making this possible. You know, we go through a lot of stuff here, but like we said, we also are here to give the solution. And to remind everyone that in a Continental Assembly form, there's a USDA program section for individual use on home ownership, farmland, repairs. But there again, it does no one no good if we do not use these things to help ourselves become self-sufficient, to put ourselves in a better situation to help our communities become self-sufficient, to put ourselves in a better situation to be better examples for future generations. Let's don't let this time pass us by or allow ourselves to be prisoners to time anymore. Let's take our place back, not because no one gave it to us, not because we looked through history and found it, because we stood up as men and women, as relatives, as tribal members, as clanmates, and decided enough was enough. Enough of the talking, enough of the pointing fingers. Let's plug into this information and let's change our conditions. And on that note, it's always fun when we get together. No place we'd rather be. Until tomorrow's Rising Show, everyone have a very, very, very peaceful day. Bliss and peace.
Peace and love, everyone.
Peace, y'all.
Peace, y'all.